Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. The other day I reviewed the new Paul Rubens Guakai watercolors, which are a classical Chinese metallic watercolor. And I had shown this rooster that I had painted, and I did have several requests for a tutorial, so I thought I would just do that today since I did record it. Now, real time, this painting took 15 minutes, so it's a very quick and easy painting, a great way to kind of play with your watercolors. Obviously, you could use regular watercolors on white watercolor paper, but I thought using the Stonehenge Aqua black watercolor paper would be really fun for this paint. Now that watercolor paper is 100% cotton. It is nicely sized. It's basically like your kind of customary watercolor paper, but it's black. So it's a really fun one to try out if you do want a paper that can handle more water, whether you're using metallic watercolors or some water-soluble pastels or something like that. So it's fun paper. I don't use it that often because I tend to use lighter papers, but it is one that I would recommend. The only other black watercolor paper I've used has been the Shizen black watercolor paper. It's a handmade watercolor paper. It's a little softer and a little more textured. So it would just depend on what you prefer, honestly, what you went with here. And if you're just looking to experiment with your watercolors, your metallic watercolors, but you don't want to invest in watercolor paper that's black, you can actually just use like a thick, heavy black cardstock and or pastel paper and see if you like that before investing. I know Strathmore has recently made a black mixed media paper that you could use. That'll be smoother than the watercolor paper, but it's definitely an option that you can do. You can sketch on your black paper with any sort of lighter colored pencil. I'm using a pastel pencil. You could also use chalk. The nice thing about a pastel pencil or chalk is that if you make a mistake, all you have to do is use a wet Q-tip to wipe it away. Obviously, graphite pencil would be difficult to see on the black paper, so especially for filming, the pastel just works really well for that. And you can also erase with a regular eraser or just kind of dab at it with a kneaded eraser if you need to remove any mistakes. Like I did there, I needed to adjust the rooster's leg. I needed to have him a little bit more secure. So having one leg at a 90-degree angle with the ground and the other one out just kind of gives the bird a lot more stability. It's a good idea to spray your watercolors with water, especially with the metallic colors, before you begin painting because they can be a little tricky to reactivate otherwise. I use a continuous mist sprayer and I always get asked about it, and it's really inexpensive. It's about $6 on Amazon. I'll link that down below in case you're curious about that because somebody always asks. Now, it's best actually to spray the paints before you begin sketching, then they'll be perfect and ready to go when you are ready to paint. I'm using a large Taklon round brush for this. This is an Arteza brand brush. There was a big pack of brushes pretty affordably priced. I'm not sure if they're still in stock or not, but if so, I'll link them up. But they were all Taklon, and those brushes being a little springier are really good for metallic paints, which tend to reactivate a little more slowly and need a little bit more well, you want to use them a little bit a little more thickly. So you don't want to pick up too much water, basically, and the Taklon bristles do not hold a lot of water, so it's easier to get more paint and less water on those brushes, is what I want to say. They're also really great for gouache, and they're okay for watercolor, but I prefer them for metallic watercolors or gouache. Now, this set does not have a mixing area, so that's probably one of the drawbacks to it, so I just have a little dish that I'm using to mix up colors as needed. So if you do purchase this set of watercolors, you will just want to have something handy that you can mix on, and that could just be a white dinner plate from the dollar store, or this is actually a little feather trinket tray from the dollar store. I like to collect cute little white ceramic plates to use for mixing. It's kind of like a little collection I have. They're fun to use. I'm always looking at them like at antique shops and stuff. So you just find something fun, little that you can mix on. It doesn't have to be ceramic, but I will tell you, mixing on ceramic or glass for watercolor is wonderful because it doesn't beat up and you can see your colors accurately on the white ceramic. I don't like to mix the metallic colors too much when I'm working on the black. I kind of want to keep the color a little more pure, so I do tend to go straight from the pans a lot, so you don't need a huge mixing area. I would recommend trying to keep them a little bit pure. You have so many colors there that you really shouldn't have to mix to get your secondary colors. Sometimes you'll want to tone a color down, and the plate is good for that, but for the most part I'm just going in with the pure colors right out of the pans. Now, one thing I like about these pans is that they're really big, so I can put a big brush in there if I want to. I think these would be really fun to mix with traditional watercolors to do, or to make some of those custom colors that have been really popular lately, the layered colors that have mica and have pigment and have granulating colors and dye colors, and then you end up getting this really fun separating effect. I think these would be a really good candidate for that. But yeah, it really doesn't matter if you have a half pan set, if you have a dot card, you can do this project with whatever metallic watercolors you have. I have to say the set that I use the most for metallic watercolors, and I mention this over and over again because I know a lot of you guys have it already, is the set of 24 Paul Rubens metallic watercolors in the pink tin. I have the 48 set, but I use that 24 set more than anything because it's got such a good variety of colors. The colors wear down so slowly. One thing I'm noticing about this set of 36 colors, it's fairly affordable. So I mean, you know, you give some, you get some, I guess. You give some and I don't know. So there's pros and cons, basically. So one thing I'm noticing about these paints is that they do reactivate quicker. Like I just sprayed it and I was ready to go. I didn't have to let them soak. Like I let the other paints soak a little bit more. But I do think that these are going to wear down a lot faster. So even though those are pretty big pans, they're not very thick. Like the layer of paint's not that thick. So I think you would burn through them a lot quicker. But man, look at the color payout. Look at that gorgeous bright purple. And I'm just kind of putting the colors next to each other and letting them kind of push into each other for where I want things to blend. But I do want to retain those unique colors as well, just because I think it's kind of pretty. Now you don't get a lot of shift between wet and dry with the metallics, which is really nice. So you don't have to worry about things changing too drastically. If you hear crows and chickens and things, I have all my doors and windows open because it's such a nice day. And this ambient sound for our rooster painting. The neighbors have chickens and roosters and stuff. And I just put some food out for the crows, so they're out there telling their friends. But look at these beautiful, like cobalt blue, the ultramarine, the purple. They just look so pretty next to each other. And make sure you let some of that black paper show through because that's going to give you the contrast that you need. It's kind of like using the white of the paper. If you were painting traditionally, you're using the black of the paper because you're kind of painting in reverse a little bit here, which is kind of a fun challenge. Try to use an economy of brushstrokes when you're painting this piece. It is very loose and fresh, and one of the ways that you keep that looseness and freshness is by not overworking it. So with the comb and the wattle there, all you need is just a couple dabs of red, and that shows that it's a rooster. All you need is a few swipes of different colors in the feathers to show the iridescence. Even if you're doing this with traditional watercolors on white paper, if you get those little strokes of brown and purple and green and blue, it's going to appear like it's iridescent. So you can definitely get that effect with your traditional supplies. Adding just a little swipe of the pearl for a highlight in front of the feet. Just keep it very light and easy. Pretend that like you're getting charged $1 a brushstroke and you're trying to keep the painting under budget. That's how I try to get people to use fewer brushstrokes. Now I wanted to add a little bit of energy, so I'm doing a little bit of spatter. Also, this can look like pebbles or dust or feed, things like that at the bird's feet. I think that looks nice. And now I want to do a little bit of a wet in wet technique here, so I'm adding some water kind of where there may be some reflections on the ground. Generally, if you've got chickens in a farmyard, there'll be little shadows cast from here or there. There'll be divots in the ground. There'll be pebbles. There'll be all sorts of stuff. And so I just wanted to put in a little bit of background to make it a little more interesting, and also maybe put a little bit of color on the ground. Like it could be maybe a puddle. It could be just about anything. And I just think it just adds some nice weight and grounding to the bottom of the picture. I love the gorgeous blues in this set. There's some really nice blues and greens and reds in this set. And I think throwing some of that on the ground just adds a little bit of life. And plus, if it's blue, it could read as water being reflected on the sky, and the spatters can look like splashes, which I think is also kind of fun. So there's just a little bit of an idea for finishing off your background areas. Now that my painting is dry, I thought I'd go in with some India ink, and what I did was I took a water brush. You know how you get water brushes that come in paint sets and stuff? Well, I have bunches of them. So I filled one with Dick Blick Black Cat India ink. It's a nice thick opaque black ink. And I'm just going in there fully concentrated and adding some marks. Now, if you followed my advice of using an economy of brush strokes, which I did not follow that advice very well myself, you might not even need to go in here with any black ink. But I do find that it can break things up, especially if you have a large area of metallic paint where you're just getting a lot of reflection. Now, the way that the camera is reading this, it's really looking a lot lighter than it is because I'm getting so much reflection on the surface of the paint. In real life, though, it is quite a bit more colorful, and when I tip it up at the end of this video, you're going to see that you're going to see more of the true color there. But the nice thing about the black ink is you can go in and recapture some of those dark areas that you might have overdone, and you can also put some energizing marks in there that will give your bird a little more life. You can even do a little bit of shading if you want to. Like I have a little bit of water and diluted ink on that little palette there, so I could pull in a little bit of a shadow on the further away leg and kind of push it back a bit. So, you know, experiment with the ink. There's a lot you can do with it, and it's a lot of fun. Now here you can see as I tip it towards the camera, you can see the color that it really is a little bit better. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this project. It was a lot of fun to paint it in real time for you, and I hope you give it a try. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.